are mourning as if a family member died. Wilson Van Os reports on the life and death of a talented musician.
At age 38, Brent Mydland was the junior member of the Grateful Dead. He joined the group 10 years ago, and many followers say he was just now coming into his own.
Police say friends discovered Mydland's body at his Lafayette home this morning.
Mydland is the third Grateful Dead keyboardist to die. Keith Godshaw was killed in a 1980 car wreck after he'd left the band, and Ron McKiernan died of liver disease in 1973.
I was shocked at first. I just couldn't believe it. I was sad.
Great blues vocalist. Really a tragic loss. Very sad.
And he was a major contributor, and he made me feel real good along with everybody else. And not anymore. And it's awful. It's a tragedy.
I started playing a lot of Brent songs this week, and just, boy, the more I played, the more I know I was going to miss him.
I definitely appreciate him as a keyboardist. I think he had a wonderful sound, and he could do a lot to add to the music.
My friends and I were all just devastated. It's a tragedy is the only word for it. It's been very disheartening and really confusing and really just so, you know, people are bereft, you know, of feeling. It's so ununderstandable. You know, he had everything to be here for, you know, why did he have to go now? Seems very strange.
Like a steam locomotive rolling down the track. He's gone, gone, and nothing's gonna bring him back. He's gone.
He grew up in Concord, then moved to L.A. and joined Silver down there. Silver was a band that Brent played in before the Grateful Dead. And actually, I guess before, I think he went from Silver to Bobby and the Midnights, then into the Dead, as I recall.
But the way I heard it was that Jerry had seen Brent work with Bob and suggested that he was, you know, somebody they should try out. Brent told me that he had listened to a bunch of Grateful Dead records and then gone in to try out with them and sort of been told, well, we don't do it that way. You know, he was listening to the records was not a good idea, you know. He mentioned that they might have rehearsed for a couple of weeks, and he mentioned that they went up on stage at Spartan Stadium.
We got out right before we went on stage. I said, what are we going to do? Said, I don't know what we're going to do. Follow along. It's been like that ever since.
The first thing I thought of was he looks and sounds like Greg Allman. That was, I mean, he had the long blonde hair, the sort of blondish beard. You know, the hair kind of flowing back and forth when he played. It really reminded me of Greg Allman. Well, it was particularly significant when Brent came in the band because his style was so much different than Keith's. I mean, Keith was really a piano player first and foremost. So when Brent came in the band, it was immediately different because, for one thing, the palette of colors he drew from was so much richer than Keith's because he was playing a lot of Hammond organ. You were just immediately more aware of the keyboards in the music, and he was filling the holes in the Dead's music in a different way than Keith did.
Go to Heaven was the first album that he played on with the Dead. It was recorded the year that he joined the band. He had 2 songs on that album. I heard from Brent and from Garcia and from Barlow that the record company was not thrilled with his contributions to it, that Clive Davis, the president of Arista Records, had said these songs weren't Grateful Dead enough or something. And John Barlow was brought in as kind of the song doctor to Grateful Dead them up, whatever the hell that means. There were several live albums that came out during that period, and Brent's contributions to those were quite obvious. He's present all over the acoustic album. I mean, and he played he had a synth solo on Alabama Getaway. That was one of those places where he played sort of a similar solo every time.
He has some good songs, and he played great keyboards, and it fit in perfectly with their new format. But as I said, I prefer the old guitar band.
One of the things you have to remember about Brent is that he came into a band that was already kind of going full throttle, even though there's a certain amount of adjustment that takes place any time a new band member is added. They have this rich collective history that's very hard to sort of jump into the middle of if you're not from the same space that they are. He was not part of the San Francisco scene. He didn't share that whole kind of psychedelic vision that is so much a foundation of the band, really. So that was something he sort of had learned secondhand and by extension firsthand by playing it.
Hey, excuse me, would you go out and get a couple of cold sixes because I'm going to go on stage in a minute. I'm getting really dry.
Oh, I would, but I got to go up there myself pretty soon. I'm the keyboard player.
Oh, Brent, I'm sorry.
It seemed like within time, Deadheads were accepting him more and more. And I think he probably grappled at first with the fact that some Deadheads, I assume, or seemed like had a little problem with him at first.
Though I think that oftentimes on stage, where he felt himself to be under intense examination all the time, both by the band and the audience, he felt himself an outsider in the band. I don't think they made him feel that way, but he did. He definitely felt himself an outsider as far as the audience was concerned. I don't think he ever appreciated the fact that there were a lot of people out there that liked him.
His newer songs I liked a lot better than the older songs. I thought that the older songs were they weren't as bright and light.
In a world where Robert Hunter and John Barlow are declaiming their poetry, even stepping up to the plate takes a lot of nerve.
I feel like he was often, a lot of people ragged on him because he was, you know, a younger member of the band and he wasn't as well accepted, but I think he was very, very talented, and I think his songs and his voice added a depth to the band that was not formerly there.
I think it took some getting used to. I think it's just like adding a new member to your family, but yeah, I enjoyed that. I thought he put a lot into every show I saw.
I always had that feeling that he was not, that he could have used a little bit more confidence, and a real deep, you know, confidence of the heart, not just confidence of the mind or of the musical ability. Just, I mean, you know, I think that's what I mean about not being comfortable here. I just don't know that he knew how good he was. His musical contributions were amazing, and his presence grew and grew and grew over the years. He got more and more confident and more able and willing to contribute substantively to the music.
And coming in 1980, you know, he was just sort of expected to be able to jump in and start swimming. And in that regard, I think he did an amazing job, because if you listen to tapes from 78 and then you listen to tapes from 79 after he comes in, the band really doesn't slow down that much. I mean, he was right in there.
Players who can cop the changes are fairly easy to find. Players who can get out there in that amazing realm where you are all commingling your minds and playing together is another story entirely. That's hard to find.
He did amazing things in terms of the way in which he insinuated himself into the total sound of the Grateful Dead. I mean, it was, you listen to the live record, listen to Without a Net, and you hear him everywhere. Not out front particularly, but he's everywhere. You know, blending color and form in a kind of abstract, expressionist way. I think he was a brilliant musician.
Brent was really a very talented and soulful player. Some musicians, I believe, play from a very technical background, and it's not always synonymous with soulfulness. Brent had both. He had a very good knowledge base of music and music theory, and played classical when he was a kid, I believe, and was a very fluid, technical keyboard player, but at the same time, he could also, and the guy just expelled feeling in his playing, which there's a select few of musicians that can really do that.
he went in there and was Brent Mydland to the max, which happened to be an amazing Hammond B3 player, a talented synthesist, and a guy for whom the technology was just opening up and who grew into it marvelously over that 11 years.
Seeing him slam into the Hammond B3 organ on some of those real get-down, low-down blues was just great. I like to get right low down with him and just dance, and my body would be doing just what he was doing with that B3, and that felt just superb.
He could also play all this beautiful synthesized string stuff, and he still could kick ass and take names with the Hammond organ.
I think what also stands out, he was a great B3 player, organ player. And it's an instrument that's becoming a bit of a dinosaur in the music business. He's one of the talented people that can still really do it.
I think as he integrated more cover material into his repertoire, I definitely warmed up to him more. I mean, I loved what he did with Hey Pocky Way.
Working with Brent sort of got Phil to start singing again, you know, that he could work with him on the vocals and stuff, where I guess he had not been able to nail down a lot of rehearsal time with the other guys or something. But those two guys kind of, I know this one, only because of that encounter, that Brent and Phil decided together to work up Gimme Some Lovin'.
I always enjoyed when he did the Mr. Fantasy into Hey Jude, obviously, and I like Gimme Some, when he did the keyboards on Gimme Some Lovin'.
Loved the combination of Brent and Phil on Gimme Some Lovin'. I love Dear Mr. Fantasy.
You're going to miss the fantasy Judes and the enthusiasm. Sitting there and he's kicking his feet, he's jumping around, sliding and smiling.
Well, go ahead, Brent, saying, again, the same things, Easy to Love You, Far From Me, and that's when the marriage of Fantasy and Hey Jude got put together. I think that I kind of came up with the idea of, especially on the ride out of Fantasy, of going into the na-na-na-na-na-na, the Hey Jude section. I said, hey guys, try this, man, over this, and this will be really cool. And it worked. It worked well.
The minute I heard he died, the first thing I thought of was those lines in Dear Mr. Fantasy, you know, you are the one who can make us all glad, but doing it, you break down in tears, you know, and that's Brent in a nutshell, really. A guy who made a lot of people happy with his music and never could, for whatever reasons, could find happiness himself.
A lot of his songs, like We Can Run But We Can't Hide, is a big contribution, I think, not only to the band, but to the whole world.
I thought that song We Can Run was particularly pretty, and I liked it a lot, and I thought it was the kind of song that you could teach to school children, to have them sing along at a school sing-along or whatever. It was that good and that meaningful.
Brent's music was taking the band in a direction that it seemed like they really were happy to go towards, you know, ecological concerns and more from the heart, you know.
Okay, I think it's very important that we talk about the fact that this is for our kids. It's not necessarily for us, it's for future generations. We're talking about maybe losing cures for cancer, air, water. We're talking about losing the whole life on Earth, really, the way we know it.
We don't own this place, though we act as if we did. It belongs to the children of our children's kids. The actual owners haven't even been born yet. But we never tend the garden and we rarely pay the rent. Most of it is broken and the rest of it is bent. Put it all on plastic and I wonder where we'll be when the bills hit. We can run, but we can't hide from it. Of all possible worlds, we only got one, we gotta ride on it. Whatever we've done, we'll never get far from what we leave behind. Baby, we can run, 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 but we can't hide. get far from what we leave behind. Baby, we can run, 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 but we can't hide. Oh no, we can't hide.
As far as what Brent did outside of music and stuff, I'd say that he was very devoted to his family, you know, especially to his kids. He was a real devoted dad and loved his kids dearly, and they were very important to him. They talked about him all the time. Sure. Pictures, talked about him. Loved his kids. And that was probably a side of Brent that I don't know if Deadheads or the public saw that much, but I mean, he was really a total family man.
I like I Will Take You Home. I think that's a beautiful song, and that's another really sad thing to think that his little daughters will never hear that song, and what will they think when they hear that song when they grow up and know that their daddy's not there to take them home?
You know, it expressed something that both of us really desperately wanted to be able to say, you know, as clearly as possible. And, you know, it turns out to be a terrible irony, really. Terrible, heartbreaking irony, because he will not take them home. He will not be there.
But I Will Take You Home was just a beautiful song, and I remember the version of it that moved me the most was when he played it at Frost last year, and it was the first time Jerry had used the MIDI trumpet, and they basically played it as a duet, and just kind of being out in the sun. Jerry's got this incredible little horn that sounds almost like some Renaissance cornet or something, and Brent singing the song, it was very moving.
Dry your eyes on the wind. La 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 la.
I always felt that Jerry and Brent had a special bond, and I don't think it was just proximity on the stage. One of the things I heard Garcia said recently to someone was that, in a way, he always felt anchored by Brent, that he could always listen to Brent and sort of know where he was in the tune, and that gave him a certain sense of security that he didn't have if he was like only listening to what Bob was doing, because Bob was off in that Bob world that we all know and love so well.
Seemed like he was a part of the band. Jerry seemed to enjoy his contribution, and they seemed to work off each other real well.
You can sort of hear Brent trailing Jerry, or Jerry trailing Brent, or even sort of trading off little notes here and there in an interesting way. And I think it is because he was so melodic.
I could really see how he and Jerry egged each other on, and they were kicking each other's ass with energy and music. And that was a wonderful thing to see. There was all this love going back and forth that said, come on, give it a little more, come on, make me work harder. And that was really fun.
I know Jerry always was trying to encourage him. I mean, Jerry is part of the reason I think he came out of his shadow as much as he did towards the end.
Brent started writing with Barlow in the beginning of 1988. Barlow stopped by my house one day during that period, and he was just totally jazzed. He had spent the day out at Brent's house writing songs together.
The combination of the two of us in an open setting without somebody else looking on created a zone of interaction that was just amazingly fertile. I mean, all we had to do was to get together with a piano, and a song would magically appear. I mean, he was a monster. He was unbelievable. Truly extraordinary talent. I'd say, well, I don't think that's the right feel for this. Let's start and approach it another way. And I'd give him like da-da-da-da. And in a minute, he'd have the whole song, you know, set to another key, another feel, you know, fully orchestrated.
My favorite song was A Little Light. I thought that song held a little content.
I think the most interesting of the last batch of songs that they wrote together was Just a Little Light, which really expresses, I think, a lot of the emotions Brent was feeling. Here was a guy who did find it hard to experience joy to a certain degree, and somebody who was looking for just a little sweetness, just a little light in his life.
It was just a statement of how you go about opening up your heart and shedding a little sweetness in the world, and not simply having that defensive posture of irony verging on sarcasm. Because there's plenty of that, you know, it's not in short supply.
Smiling hard. It's hard to explain. I think I'm learning firsthand about what it's like to be a musician. And I can see it's not an easy life. It's not an easy life to live. It's not an easy life. It's not an easy life to live. It's not an easy life. It's not an easy life.
Brent, we miss you. We love you, man. We love you, Brent.